prince of pot pies, the prince of pepper steaks, the prince of peach cobbler.
For the last 2 months, Dr. Umar Johnson has been the headline of many controversies, from dating women to actually losing his school. At first, it was a rumor, and it really wasn't verified, until Dr. Umar verified himself.
They will sell our campus. Brothers and sisters, can I ask you a question? Why were we not notified that they were going to try to sell our campus? Brothers and sisters, why are they trying to sell our campus at the very moment that our accounts are frozen? Brothers and sisters, is it a coincidence? Is it a coincidence? Is it a coincidence that the city of Wilmington is trying to sell properties that we own and have been working on continuously behind our backs? They were going to sell our schools behind our backs. They didn't even tell us that they were going to try to sell our schools. We received no notice in the mail. We received no notice by email. We received no phone calls at all that they were going to try to sell our schools. Instead, they put a notice on the door handle.
I was thinking to myself, this is interesting. Tariq Nasheed hasn't really been talking about this, and we all know about the beef that Tariq Nasheed had with Dr. Umar several years ago. And then, lo and behold, Tariq Nasheed covered this topic on a Twitter space. Now, we got to understand that while both of them will be considered pro-black in a way, they differ in ideologies, okay? Tariq Nasheed is fully #FBA or Black American centered. Dr. Umar Johnson is #FBA by origin, and he is also Black American centered. That's true, but he's also diaspora centered. And what we call that is a person who is Pan-African. Now, out of the two communities, I'm in both, but I definitely live in Africa, so I understand both sides of the positions. But Tariq Nasheed brought up something that was interesting.
School that he's been talking about building has been having trouble for a couple of decades, damn near. When I had a beef with Umar almost a decade ago, I told people the school was never going to open. I told people, I wasn't being mean-spirited, but I told people then this school is never going to open, and it's been teetering along, and he's been fundraising for it, and the open dates kept getting pushed back, and it's been a mess. And then Umar's going through things with these women he's dealing with these strange women, these older women, and they're calling him out, and god damn.
Tariq Nasheed discusses the issues that Dr. Umar Johnson has had with this particular school over the years. And not only that, other problems. This is important because, number one, when you are the prince of Pan-Africanism and you say that you are the most requested scholar in the world, we would liken you to some of the old greats in the community, such as Dr. John Henrik Clark or Dr. Amos Wilson, even Malcolm X. These are men that didn't have sexual scandals, that didn't have financial crimes or scam scandals, and they understood leadership. If they had any problems, if it was infidelity based, we never known about it. It was never verified, largely because they probably were not doing it. And that's what he's trying to get at here. Dr. Umar Johnson wants to be a leader, but doesn't qualify for the leadership or the responsibility that he wants people to give him. He hasn't earned it, and therefore he's a person that doesn't deserve it. But wait, there's more.
And a lot of people are looking at this as the nail in the coffin for Pan-Africanism. Umar says he's the prince of Pan-Africanism. And as we see, Pan-Africanism is, it's been hanging by a thread, the whole ideology of it. And there's a symbolism here, the symbolic collapse of the school and Pan-Africanism. This is what it is. The school was not just a personal mission. It presented itself as like a Pan-African institution.
Now here he's talking about the school and who the school was meant for. The FDMG Academy was not only meant for Black Americans or Black American students in the Wilmington, Delaware area. It was supposed to embody all of the historical teachings and benefit Black children in the diaspora, especially young men. But then he says this.
But, this was presented as it was going to be a Pan-African institution meant to unify diasporic children and Afrocentric educators and all this stuff. And its failure after damn near, what, 2 decades, almost 2 decades of promises, it's being viewed as a symbolic collapse of Pan-African idealism without execution. This is the reality. Pan-Africanism, it has really no tangible track record in America. Despite decades of rhetoric, and we've been talking about this lately, Pan-Africanism has produced very few institutions, schools, sustained infrastructure for Black Americans. It just hasn't.
He then goes on to talk about how Pan-Africanism hasn't produced anything for Black Americans. And this is very interesting because I'd like to take his statement one step further. Pan-Africanism doesn't produce anything largely for anybody. Don't get me wrong, there are things that happen here and there. I mean, you find certain countries, Kenya opening its visa restrictions to allow other people come in, and obviously the African Free Trade Agreement is something on the rise. But the reality is Pan-Africanism really doesn't produce anything. And the reason why it doesn't produce anything is because everybody who runs something in Pan-Africanism, for the most part, operates with a survivalism mentality. This is very true in the United States. It's true in Africa. Almost all people who run Pan-African organizations that I have met, okay, this is not everybody, are scammers or liars. It's the God's honest truth. Most people who talk up Pan-Africans or Pan-Africanism, they're trying to scam for themselves, and they really don't care about Black people at all. And in fact, many Pan-Africanists are haters of Black people. If Pan-Africanism was really operating with meritocracy, we wouldn't see all the problems we have in Africa. We wouldn't see all the problems we have in the diaspora in America. But the reason why Pan-Africanism doesn't exist like it should is because everybody operates from a survivalism mentality, and you cannot work or collaborate with a survivalism mentality. This is the shock that Black Americans get when they come over to Africa, when you come to Uganda, when you come to Ghana. Kenya's a lot better when you may come to certain parts of Kenya, or South Africa is better. But what you're gonna find out is when somebody encounters you, they may not be looking at you as a brother. They could be nice, they could be smiling at you, but because of how they've grown up, and this is not to say that people are not nice or not good people in Africa, but they have to look out for themselves. It is difficult to deal with somebody on a collaborative scale that it has a seller's market mentality. Okay, now most Black Americans in general, we look at buyers first mentality or a customer service first mentality. This is why the brands like Apple grow, right? We trust it. They reinvest into their products. They make their products better. They're honest, okay? But when you're dealing with Pan-Africanism, you have so many people who have a seller's market mentality. Look at Dr. Umar Johnson. He believes you're supposed to give him money, and he's supposed to do whatever with the money, and then there is no accountability for why the school is closed, okay? And it's your fault. It's everybody else's fault. That's a person that operates with the seller's market mentality. But these are the people that represent Pan-Africanism, okay? And when they represent it like that, nothing can get done because Pan-Africanism, if it is to work, it takes a lot of sacrifice. Here's the benefit of what Tariq Nasheed is talking about when you talk about hashtag FBA. It's easier to sacrifice for something that you identify with. It's easier to sacrifice for your own group. Okay, it's much easier to do that. That's why you have some of the black colleges that we have in America today. Some of them are funded by the AME Church or are just public institutions. It's easier to sacrifice that which you can relate to. Black Americans or anybody else cannot really relate so much to Pan-Africanism as they can to being the original Negro or African Americans. Okay, so it's much easier to do that. But the way that Black Americans think is because somebody else is black and they're black, okay, then we can still dig up the bond that we have for one another and exchange that for somebody else. The problem occurs when the other person has never had to do that, either for themselves or their own group or nobody else. Then what you get is disparity. So what happens is it actually costs you to operate in Pan-Africanism more than it costs you to operate with #FBA. And this is not the only person that feels like this.
It took me a while to figure it out. They call them hoteps. All of these brothers, these so-called conscious brothers, these so-called smart brothers, these revolutionary type brothers, and there's nothing wrong with having that mindset. None of them are working. Most of them, they are just all talk and no bark. And I'm starting to realize that. Or they're going to use their competence to try to bamboozle and manipulate the people. I have been friends with black men that are extremely revolutionary and they don't have a job and they don't plan on getting no business about their mother self. That's one thing I'm noticing. So let me get this straight. You can sit here and you can preach about white supremacy. You can preach about systemic racism and you can preach about all of these things. But for some reason, you don't want to take the necessary steps there are to take to actually benefit the black community or actually put something back into your community or put something back into your household. I'm going to tell y'all right now, okay? If you see a brother with them colors, and y'all know what I'm talking about. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Them red, black, and green colors or anything that resembles Pan-Africanism, run. I hate to say that because I know all brothers are not like that. But they have a history of they have a history of really misleading the people because of their so-called quote unquote knowledge. All of these brothers, most of these brothers, the majority of these brothers ain't got no motion in real life. I promise you that. I promise you that. They just all talk. They don't have any resources. They don't have any of that to elevate their own household, let alone the black community. All I'm saying is use your critical thinking skills and move on.
Now, as you see, the young lady is not speaking about Umar directly, but she basically is summing up Umar. She's talking about guys like Brother Polite and other men. Most guys that are with the red, black, and green, this is not all of them, but it tends to be most of them. Most of them talk like this for personal gain, to use people, to get women, to hide their sexual deviancy. We've all seen it. Malachi York. I mean, the list goes on. The reality is that Pan-Africanism is still a white space opportunity. It's still a lot to grow. It's a what if concept. And I am a person in the Pan-Africanist community, right? I lived in Europe for some time. I'm #FBA. But I'm going to be honest, I've criticized the Pan-African community because it cannot grow when you are a person that's trying to survive. It's hard for people in the so-called Pan-African community to sacrifice for the greater good of other people that they don't understand. For an example, let's use our Nigerian brothers, our Ghanaian brothers. It's hard for me to sacrifice what I know for them. I don't know what it means to be a Nigerian. And within Nigeria itself, there are many different tribes, customs, cultures that I don't understand, and they don't understand me. So it's hard for me to sacrifice myself for something that I don't understand, and probably knowing that that particular group of people wouldn't sacrifice for Pan-Africanism to grow. They would probably look out for themselves, and to a certain degree, I may look out for myself. That's the problem with Pan-Africanism. But I believe if you have good leadership, like somebody like Umar, who did sacrifice, then it would teach other people the benefit of sacrificing for the community. But when the person is a leader that is stealing, the person is a leader that is committing fraud, the person that's a leader isn't responsible, there is no way that Pan-Africanism can grow when you have people representing the movement like a Dr. Umar Johnson. It becomes a caricature. It doesn't become a movement. It becomes a joke. And so when people call this out for what it is, they're not lying. They're telling the absolute truth. And I'm a person that, I'm in all kind of deep Pan-African spaces. The Pan-African community is deep. It's not just Hoteps. You have 5% Nation, some Nation of Islam. You have Christians. You have atheists. You have the different sects of Hebrew Israelites. You got North American Moorish. You have a whole bunch, especially the Hebrew Israelites are more African, different sects. But the reality is that nobody can really sacrifice for the greater good of Africa. And then Africa has a hard time sacrificing. Again, you have most people in Africa that have a survivalism mentality. Africans that come to America are, hey, it's about me. I got to win first for my family. You can't build a community like that. And that is why Pan-Africanism is failing. It remains a white space idea, but it takes sacrifice. So guys, what do you think? It's your boy O'Shea Duke Jackson back at it again with another episode of The Celebrity Junk. I appreciate you for all that you do. Grab the bell. We're out.